Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Horns Report here on KXAN Plus, where we talk about all things UT athletics. And before we get going, let me remind you about where you can find us. If you're watching us on KXAN Plus, our CTV app, thank you so much. You can find this on demand, and it'll also be at 6:30 p.m. on Mondays, like usual time. And you can also find us on YouTube. So please, if you go to YouTube, like and subscribe. All that fun stuff. As far as CTV apps go, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV is where you can find us. Alrighty, well, we have a ton of things to talk about. Obviously, football, we're creeping closer to the season opener against Ohio State on August 30th. We're a little bit less than 2 weeks away. And here to talk about it is, of course, Roger Wallace, KXAN Sports Director. And a special guest today, Nick Shuley, the producer of Third and Longhorn podcast, which you can also see on KXAN Plus. And Nick does a lot of other stuff too that we're going to talk about, mostly in the NIL space. And Nick, let's get right to it, man. So you have founded the Clark Field Collective and helped with Texas One Fund. Those were kind of the first sort of NIL collectives on the scene when this became a thing. How have those kind of evolved since you started them?
Yeah, so I've since left the space, but sure. It has evolved a ton, and just in the time we were running things, it started with Clark Field, which was the first effort to get some. I would say to get everyone on the same page for NIL at Texas, and then we started looking into obviously the need for some type of nonprofit related to NIL and work together. And then at that time, there were a few organizations out there. I kind of helped to bring everybody together and helped brand up the Texas One Fund and get everything together. So just in that time, though, I think the analogy everyone used was you were kind of building the plane while you were flying it, and we definitely were. And the things changed so much in that space that some days people would be like, oh, this is legal, and then the next week it'd be illegal, and then the next week it'd be legal. And so it was just kind of a constant adjustment, staying on top of things. And the space has come a long way. Obviously, it's stabilized a bit, but now we're seeing a lot of formalized changes. So it just continues to fluctuate and change, and I think it will keep that way for a while.
Yeah, it is kind of like the Wild West out there in the NIL, especially, it came in, weren't too many guardrails, there weren't a lot of guidelines. It just sort of just your players getting paid, which is great. I mean, I always thought they should get paid. So, I mean, it is a great thing that they're finally getting some compensation for, putting their bodies on the line, putting their lives on the line, essentially. But yeah, now that things are kind of come into focus a little bit more, I know you said that you've left, but I mean, you got to feel good about how this is kind of all kind of evolved into what it is now, right?
Yeah, and we said that from the start. I think we had to do this at a level that felt like Texas, even though this couldn't officially be part of Texas. And now, obviously, the NIL is blurring into the schools. But we wanted this to be highest standards. We were making sure that everything we did was by the book. And that's hard to do, especially when you've got state laws disagreeing with NCAA rules, et cetera. And so trying to stay on top of it. But we were really detailed, made sure, kept everything above board, and it worked, and we kind of helped revolutionize a lot of the space and set up how deals happen, and worked with different online platforms and really blazed the trail. It was a really exciting time, in that there weren't any books out there on what you could be doing. We were kind of writing it as we went, but it also was pretty intimidating because it was changing so much and continues to change so much.
Yeah, no, it is not. Seems like every day there's some sort of ruling, some sort of rule change. It's pretty wild. So let's move to Third and Longhorn now. A great podcast with a bunch of Texas legends. I mean, are you the executive producer? Kind of tell us what your role is with wrangling all those former Longhorn stars talking about football.
Yeah, the show actually came from the NIL space, in a sense, in that we were, once I kind of stepped away and stepped out of that, I was trying to figure out what's the right way to create a platform that really benefits NIL and helps Texas. And obviously, when you get to know athletes and you get to know players, and we got to know so many of the athletes, and not just football, all the way to volleyball, softball, rowing, all these different sports. And when you get to know the kids, you see how impressive they are, how special they are. And that's what brands want to see, right? Like when you get to know that personality, you say, hey, that's a person I'd like to help promote my brand. And so that was where it all came from. And then I happened to be at Jeremy Hill's gym, The Collective, and he was talking football with a few former players. And I was kind of sitting there listening to him and said, hey guys, I know everybody says this, but you need a podcast. And so, Hills was like, man, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And he's like, you run it. I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to run it. And then I was like, I always do these, and I'd help some other athletes set up their podcast. So I was like, yeah, this will be easy. And Hills was like, no, you're going to run it. I was like, yeah, I understand. He's like, no, you're going to be on it. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. And he was like, well, if you don't do it that way, then we're not going to do it. So that, I've kind of grown into the role as a host and producer, and I co-produce it with Mark Higgins, who's does a lot to help prep for everything, and it's been great. We've had a blast. We've all grown quite a bit. I do think we've all gotten better at it. I've definitely hopefully grown into it. I know it was a little tough at the start. This is not an easy thing, and I respect what you guys do, and Roger, what you do. It's not easy.
Dude, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, Roger's a pro at this. He's been doing this for a long time. This is kind of my first foray into being on camera, things like that. I'm a print writer by trade. But I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Nick. Like I'm sort of like getting thrown into the fire, and I'm kind of learning as I go. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job. But hey, I guess that's a matter of opinion. But I mean, Roger, like with Third and Longhorn and all of these podcast booms, I know that there's some folks over at a competing station that have started a podcast with the likes of Mac Brown and Vince Young. So everybody wants to talk Texas these days, and now everybody's getting a chance to.
Well, and to Nick's point, telling the stories, and that's one thing that's so cool about this, Nick, is these athletes, you get to have long-form conversations and get to know them. And Sark came on with you guys for close to an hour, and then you've got such strong personalities with the Rod Babers and Alex Okafor, Fozzie Whitaker, Jeremy Hills, and not only that, but their vast knowledge, and I'm sure some remember more than others about things like that. But it must be fun to kind of mix the Longhorn legends along with the current athletes, and I'm sure the current guys are pretty comfortable because they all talk their own language there.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have guys that have been there before on that show. Like if it was just me interviewing Sark, that would not have been a great interview, and I definitely know the vibe wouldn't have been the same. But I think having all those guys in there that people are comfortable with, they've seen those guys around practice, or for the alumni, they're their friends, and I think that it just opens up the conversation in a way. And for me, it's I feel at points I almost like lose track of where I am, because growing up in Austin, growing up a Texas fan, you kind of lose track a little bit, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's Brian Arakpo talking about that play that I remember sitting in the upper deck watching him and hearing that from the top deck, and so it's kind of a full circle moment, but it's been really, really cool, and the show's come together great, and we all really enjoy it. At the start, I think it was kind of a struggle to get everybody together, and now it's hey, when are we doing it this week?
Can I ask one more thing about the NIL space, and that is, I think some people are now maybe even more confused than ever because of the House settlement, and now the schools can pay their athletes directly, but there still is an NIL component, but it's not with these groups that basically just gather a bunch of money and then hand it out. Can you kind of separate some of the fact and fiction with all this? Because as you said, it's so young and so much has changed in just a few years.
Yeah, I think the key word is fair market value, and that's what's shifted so much, and we tried to keep things as fair market value as possible. If whether it was an appearance, whether it was something with the charity, things like that, we wanted to make it as legitimate as we possibly could, even though fair market value didn't matter at the time. It mattered to us because we wanted to do it the Texas way and do it right. And I think that's the part that's really shifting, is any deals that don't feel fair market value are the ones that are getting pushed back. And so anything above $600 has to be submitted to the I believe CSC. CSC.
Yeah, the College Sports Commission or whatever it's called.
So it has to go through there for approval, and so any bigger deal, and it has to pass the sniff test of fair market value, and I think that's really what we're coming down to. And so for for an athlete like Arch Manning, that's not going to be hard when you're, as high and prominent as he is. But if you're trying to like unlock money or pay money to an athlete who doesn't have as big a following, it's definitely going to be tougher to get that through.
Yeah, like and it's so like crazy to see how things have changed in such a short amount of time. There's different states are passing new laws to kind of put NIL in a box, so to speak. It's bananas, and like I honestly like I'm not that old, but I mean I remember when college sports was just, hey, like look at these amateur kids going out there and just playing the game that they love. And now, like, I don't think it takes away from the sport, the kids getting paid, but it is just another element that kind of coach have to worry about. They like Steve has long said that he's running this thing like he would if he was at Atlanta with the Falcons or like in his kind of NFL days, and I think that's sort of where things are headed with like the OTA style of training camp and being like a CEO of a franchise, quote unquote. So. It is pretty wild just to see how things have evolved.
Yeah, and I have my Google alerts still set on all the NIL stuff, and so I see everything that comes through. And I think the funny thing is that so much of the news about NIL is negative, but when you're actually in it, you start to see a lot of the positives, and you start to when you interview some of these players and you see how polished they are and you see how ready they are because they've spent time with brands, because they've done these forward facing moments, they've spent time with business leaders in the community, and I think it really makes a difference. And there's a lot of great stories, and we had my favorite story that we had was Cam Williams from last year went and visited. He did a visit at one of the children's hospitals in the cancer ward, and he had a big chain with his number on it that he wore to the event, and one of the kids was just fascinated by the chain and wanted to see it. And so Cam puts the chain on him, and this kid's face lit up so much, and the kid takes it off to give it back to Cam, and he goes, "No, man, just keep it. And just let this kid keep his chain," and obviously made that kid's year. And I don't know, there's stuff like that you just don't see that's really, really cool.
Well, the other thing, Nick, is that Sark has embraced change rather than complain about change, and he's done it at every aspect. And you've got to think that helps him because he's not sitting up there. He did talk about the contracts. He did make mention of, hey, if I leave, I have to buy my contract out. Should these athletes have to, buy their way out? But for the most part, it's all about, hey, this is the hand we're dealt now. How are we going to win? We're going to set up an operation. I always think of it like in the basement of Moncrief. They have this whole war room of like a salary cap type department. But the point is, he embraces it and he moves forward with it, and that's got to help him.
Yeah, I would say we are so fortunate at the University of Texas to have a uniquely qualified coach for this, right? Like everything that Sark's been through, all his stops on the road, he's seen it, right? He's been through the NFL. He's seen how the rosters are built. Yeah. He's faced adversity. He's done all these things, and it's all kind of prepped him for right now, and we're seeing it all kind of come together. So I honestly don't know that there's a coach more uniquely qualified for the head coaching position at a major school than Coach Sark. Yeah,
and he's showing us every day, every time we talk to him, like why he's the guy, because it's been really cool to see how he's kind of led this program into that new frontier when it comes to all the outside stuff, all the off field kind of things that don't really see. Let's go back to the Third Longhorn podcast for a second. We've talked about all the personalities you've got on there, Nick, all the opinions, all the volume. I mean, you guys have talked to some pretty big players in Texas, not just the football program, but the entire athletic department. You've been on with Chris Plonsky. You've been on with a bunch of assistant coaches. You've been on with some other folks, sort of behind the scenes kind of players. What's been the most sort of rewarding part of doing the Third Longhorn podcast for you?
Yeah, I think being able to help paint the picture of how everything happens in Texas is the coolest part. And our guys everybody on the show is awesome. They do such a great job and all bring such different personalities to the table. But you watch how everyone activates when it's something that's not the normal football conversation. And I think a lot of these guys really get a kick out of hearing how the video works, how the marketing works, how all of these things work.
Nice. And I know I've listened to 102.7 ESPN. You've got your weekly segment on there. That's kind of cool, right? I mean,
yeah.
What is it? The Big Hat 4-plaque plan of attack? That's what it is?
Yeah, so that came from my background is I've worked in music, music and sports marketing pretty much my entire life.
Nice.
And part of that was I kind of took over telling people what to do and where to go in town, whether that's concerts, sports, what have you. And then that all coincided actually when all the NIL was starting. So I would come on and talk a little bit more about the Longhorns, et cetera. But yeah, so go on there once a week and kind of tell people where the good concerts are, where the best new restaurants are, that kind of stuff. So just trying to help people navigate Austin and do it with a little bit of a sports angle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's, I think it's great for that audience too. Cause I mean, you know, there's more to life than sports, right?
Is there?
I mean, right? Is there? Yeah, I know. Seriously. All right. Well, that was a great first segment. Love hearing more about what you're doing, Nick. It's really great. Again, Third and Longhorn podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can also find it on KXAN Plus. So be sure to download that on your smart TV and look at us on YouTube. So now let's kind of shift to sort of the on-field kind of product here with football. Less than 2 weeks away from playing Ohio State, like we mentioned earlier. Steve Sarkisian is sort of getting in game mode, as it were. He's getting the team in the game mode. This week is sort of the quote-unquote mock week for the Longhorns, which is why he sort of went back-to-back with press conferences. He spoke with the media on Saturday after the second scrimmage, talked about, you know, kind of the takeaways from there, and then he doubles up this Monday today, like after we've taped this, or before we taped this rather. He spoke with the media again and just kind of detailed, you know, kind of more things about the scrimmage, how they're going to progress through this week. We've got a soundbite from him, so let's hear what Steve had to say about sort of this mock week, how he called it.
All in all, we're making good progress. I thought the guys came back today with the right mental intensity to work. You know, this is obviously a mock week for us, so this is a kind of a pseudo Monday. You know, it's not all Ohio State. We're still developing a lot of players, but at the same token, we're in the very beginning stages of what a game plan would look like, so that these guys can get a sense and a feel for their routine, the way they prepare, and the way they study. So off to a good start.
All right, so it's kind of interesting how he does that. He wants to get the guys in a routine before the routine really has to start. You know, classes starting next week, and that's game week. It's crazy to say that we're, you know, a week away from game week here in the 2025 season.
Yeah, and you know, there's so many details that sometimes we don't think about that Sark brought up there. He wants the guys to practice in the morning this week because they're going to practice in the morning during the season. He wants them to be prepared to go to class and take care of that aspect, even though there's no class this week. But again, it's just every little detail. And Saturday, they call it a third scrimmage, but really it's that game day dress rehearsal. And again, it's to get them acquainted with exactly what all the procedures are on a game day. In other words, it's the old saying, no stone unturned when it's time to play. Now they open on the road. That's a little different than we're used to. But when they open it at home the following week, they'll know exactly the routine. But that's kind of where we are. He didn't want to say that they're all in on Ohio State right now. My guess is he and the staff behind closed doors are spending the majority of the time. Julian Sain was named starting quarterback. He talked about him, recruited him heavily out of Southern California. But yeah, it's and it's funny, Billy and Nick, I think when fans hear the words Ohio State out of Sark's mouth, I think they get a little more excited because now it's a little bit more real because they've been grinding for 3+ weeks with this training camp.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Nick, were you able to make it to the Cotton Bowl last year, that CFP playoff game?
I was not. Man.
Bummer.
I sat in on the pregame show here for
nice.
that day, so I was staying.
We kept you here.
But honestly, I'm glad you did because the roads were such a mess.
Yeah, they were pretty bad.
I like hearing Ohio State out of his mouth talking about the future as opposed to the past, so I'll take it all day.
Yeah. Imagine he's been, can you imagine poor Sark? He's got to think about Ohio State, the loss. And then he's got to turn around and think about Ohio State, the next opponent. I mean, yeah, he had the Buckeye logo in his glasses for the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's had to be thinking about that first and goal from the one. They couldn't punch it in the end zone. That had to have been eating at him the entire offseason. And then he's got to go up against the same color jerseys in his first game. So that's pretty wild.
And how about back-to-back years?
Yeah.
Longhorns go on the road against the defending national champs. 2 years ago, or last year, game 2. This year, game 1. And, oh, by the way, 3 straight years at Alabama, at Michigan, at Ohio State. I mean, that you probably have to go deep into the books to find a program that's done that in 3 consecutive non-conference road games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the beauty of this expanded college football playoff, right? I mean, you can play these games now. And he says it all the time. Like, you can go out and you can – you know, you can pick a fight with a big national bully early in the season. If you come up short, you kind of have a good sort of barometer of where you're at, and you can improve from there. And then maybe if you meet them later in the season, maybe you can get them. Didn't work with Georgia, but you know, I mean, that sort of formula is still kind of there with this expansion of the playoff.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the evolution of the schedule, and granted, these schedules are made years in advance. But I think you're seeing a shift in the sport and the way things operate. Obviously, it's a more professional nature now to college football. But I also think games like this are nice because you don't, if you're Texas, you don't have a ton to lose in this one. And same with Ohio State. Like I think this is one that the committees reward people for playing. And college football has turned into a little bit like college basketball in the sense of, hey, you got to do what it takes to get there, get your resume up, and then you need to get hot at the right time. And so I think games like this are really what help you figure out where you are, figure out what you need to work on as you go in later in the year. So hopefully a game like this preps us for one of those late season battles with Georgia, et cetera.
Yeah, and I kind of think one of the interesting things about this game for me are the quarterbacks. You know, we talked about Julian Sayin being named the starter for Ohio State. He has never started a collegiate game. Arch Manning has started 2 of them. So I think it's kind of interesting that the most important position on the field for both teams that has the least amount of experience, when you can go through each roster and pick out just some absolute ballers on both sides of the ball. So I just thought that sort of kind of dichotomy is interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to anybody else. I'm kind of a nerd, so.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting, and you hate to say this if you're a Longhorn fan, but what happens when Arch has some, adversity? What happens if he throws a pick or has a turnover, can't convert, and then, how does he bounce back? He had a little bit of that, but they were home games, and they were both comfortable wins. Remember the Georgia game, he came in for Quinn, and things didn't go so well, and I'm sure Sark's looking forward to it. You got to go through those stumbles, and his dad has talked about it on national TV, Cooper Manning, about, it's been great being the backup quarterback's dad sitting in the stands. Everybody loves me. What's going to happen when, he knows firsthand from his brothers, things don't always go well, and those are one Hall of Famer and another future Hall of Famer, but still, they're going to take their lumps. That's the nature of the position. So that's going to be interesting. Also, Nick, the part about kind of go back to NIL, what's a game like this? I mean, this is the premier non-conference game in the nation for Texas and Ohio State. That's also big for these players, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge showcase, right? Like you're gonna be it's the big noon game. It's gonna be everywhere. The whole. There's some great games that weekend on the second weekend of college football. I consider it the first weekend of college football, but that's another story.
So do I.
But I think that the entire college football world is gonna be on both of those teams, and it's just another reason to showcase how important the Texas program is, how important the Ohio State program is, even a year after losing tons of production on both teams, they're right back here ranked high early, and it's gonna be an epic battle. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, Sark talked about that today, guys, about how when you're a program that he thinks they are now, you lose guys, and then other guys of equal talent. Right. Doesn't mean they're going to be as productive right away, because you have to go through it. But they're at the point now, and he used an example of watching some NFL All-Pros now on the scout team in Alabama, Quinnen Williams, Trayvon Diggs, right. And he's going, I'm watching these guys on the scout team thinking back to that and what they became. So I think he likes the fact that they've built this program where guys will be able to step in and there won't be a big drop-off. Now, when everything starts under the lights, you never know. But I think from a talent standpoint, he's comfortable with replacing a lot of talent with fresh talent.
Everybody's been on Texas's defense this offseason. I mean, just about everywhere you turn, there's a national pundit, outlet, publication, somebody calling the Texas defense potentially the best one in the country, or best one in recent memory. Like there's all kinds of glowing opinions of this Texas defense. The Associated Press feels the same way. They put 3 Texas defenders on their preseason All-America first team. I bet you could guess who it is. Anthony Hill, Michael Taft, Colin Simmons, all on the first team. Nobody on offense named either the first or second team, even though the Sporting News took a shot and put Arch Manning as the first team All-American quarterback. Clicks. Like they're begging for him. I mean, I gave him one, and we're mentioning it now. So congratulations, Sporting News, you did it. But it's one of those things, guys, where I mean this defense, we talked about it all off season. Like we knew they were going to be good. They were tremendous last season, right? They improved that pass defense leaps and bounds. They were one of the best pass defenses in the country last year. You know, it helps when you got to have guys like Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba back there. But it's like what Roger was saying. It's like, all right, like those studs leave, but we've got more waiting in the wings and just kind of biding their time. And I think that's also says a lot about Sarkisian and the culture he has built around the program, given the transfer portal era where guys, if they don't play for a year, they could just up and leave. But guys are sticking around, and then they're getting their time, which I think is kind of how college sports should be.
Yeah, and with the lengthy season, I think that you're starting to really see that, and there's a reason for even if they're too deep at every position, there's a reason to go to Texas there's a reason to go to these big schools because a lot of schools are seeing that the seasons are so long that you need to have that depth and you need to kind of platoon guys. And I think we're going to see that at a rate we probably haven't seen on defense for sure at Texas, just because you got so many defensive backs that can play ball, that need to get on the field. You got the same thing with the defensive line. We saw it a little bit last year, kind of platooning them. And I think that's once again, that changing nature of college football in these longer seasons. You want to keep some tread on the tires for the end of the year.
Yeah, he said they might see 30 guys on defense in the first half in Columbus.
Yeah, and he was saying he could have like 15 or 16 guys who are starter level players. I mean, as we all know, you can only put 11 on the field. But I mean, when you've got that kind of depth at the major, FBS level, that's an impressive thing to just be able to say. I mean, and obviously they're going to be able to back it up too, because they've got some dudes on the defensive side of the ball. I think led by Colin Simmons. I think he's going to be in for a just hellacious year. I think he's going to be.
Sark reminded us that Derek Williams was the starter at safety last year, not Andrew Makuba.
Yeah, people forget that.
Yeah.
And they had to keep Jelani McDonald off the field a lot of the time. And I think, you're going to see a lot of those guys this year.
That's a good point. And obviously, offensively, I mean, they're going to be great too. That offensive line is kind of where the question mark is, right? Like, you lose Andre Kojo early in training camp. That just kind of hurts your depth a little bit. He was battling for that right tackle position. But like we've been saying all along, it's the next man up mentality. They've got a great young guy in Brandon Baker that's poised to maybe take a lot of those reps. So, I mean, offensively, and there's a dude named Manning playing quarterback. So that you're in good hands there. Offensively, like Roger, I mean, what kind of gets you going about this team?
Well, it's what gets me going is that offensive line and seeing how they perform, and not just because they're talented, but take a guy like Jake Majors. And this guy was the quarterback of the offensive line. There was nothing he hadn't seen by the time last year rolled around. So you got guys that have played. Connor Robertson, DJ Campbell obviously is the lone returning starter. They love some of the guys, but what's going to happen, again, I keep going to the adversity part because we're just talking about talent. We're not talking about if they fall two scores down and things like that. But obviously I want to see the combination of Quintravian Wisner and C.J. Baxter. I think Jack Andrews is going to have a huge year. I think the way Sark uses his tight end, watching him, he's a huge target. I thought Gunnar Helm was going to have a big year last year, and I wasn't wrong about that. I think Endries is going to have, and it's just such a security blanket for a quarterback to have that big tight end. And then we'll see who emerges. Ryan Wingo, all reports are that he's having a big tail end of camp. DeAndre Moore as well. Emmett Mosley has been a little bit nicked up, so we'll see if he can get into the rotation. But I'm just excited to see if it's as smooth as last year's offense was.
Yeah, Nick, I mean, same question to you, man. I mean, what kind of fires you up about this offense?
Yeah, it's tough. You lost 8 of 11 starters. That definitely takes its toll. But I do. There's reasons to feel comfort on the offensive line. Obviously, Trevor Gooseby got in some big situations. Cole Hudson's played a ton of snaps, and having DJ there is great. And then it's just figuring out the other pieces. And I do think that there are wide receiver room is a little underestimated, and I think that obviously Wingo's great, but I think DeAndre Moore is going to have a really, really big year. I think he's poised to do that. He's kind of that Mr. Dependable. And then running back wise, I think we got an abundance of riches to where you can kind of platoon at that point. But a lot of it comes down to the offensive line, like you said, and I totally agree with Roger. I think Jack Endries is going to just explode this year, so that'll be great. I'm also excited about the new members of the special teams. I think it's going to be awesome to have those two guys coming in there.
Yeah, I mean, we don't talk about special teams enough. I mean, come on.
I do. I get made fun of for it, so I always talk about it.
I do. I love Mason Shipley, the local guy in Liberty Hill, coming up from San Marcos there in Texas State. A great career for the Bobcats. He was, I think his second year there, he was 15 for 15. He was on the Lou Groza semifinalist list, and then he just, for an encore, comes out and boots a 60-yard field goal against Sam Houston for the Bobcats last year. Jack Boomeister, I believe is how you say it, the Australian punter. I mean, anytime you get an Australian, I just every person from Australia I've met has been the funniest, most wild person I've ever met in my life. And I'm assuming if you're an Australian punter, it's just that much more elevated, right?
Well, I think they just go to that academy and they just say, hey, we need a punter. Because that Aussie academy just cranks them out. Of course, Michael Dixon was incredible. But, it's 9 times out of 10 you're going to see Australia by the punter's name, it seems like.
I mean, have you guys ever watched Aussie Rules football? That is crazy. And like, if you're growing up playing that game, like you've punting in your blood, right? It's I know like I said, I'm a nerd, so I'll fire up the old YouTube TV at 2 a.m. and catch some Aussie Rules football on Fox Sports 7 or ESPN 8 The Ocho, like whatever stations it's on. Anyway, lot to like about this year's team. I think we'll end this one here. I mean, we could go for hours and hours and hours, but I'm sure you have other things to do, and we're pretty busy too. So we're going to end this Horns Report here. For my guests, Roger Wallace and Nick Shuley, I'm Billy Gates. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again very soon.